Take Me for a Ride, Coming of Age in a Destructive Cult by Mark Laxer. Reading by Mark Laxer. Chapter 13. Breakdown. In the months after I tried to run away, Atmananda kept me busy expanding his postering routes north to Los Angeles and to the Bay Area. Once he had me plan and coordinate a campaign in which 100 disciples distributed 4,000 posters in 100,000 promotional newsletters across the entire state of California. He did not seem concerned that I was only 21. He seemed to have faith in me. But after the work was complete, his faith regressed into stinging verbal attacks on my level of consciousness, loyalty, and sanity. "You are mentally ill," he said. "You can hardly deal with the real world." He explained that I was a prime target for the mind-ravaging forces because I was spiritually advanced, because I held a key position in his light-spreading organization, and most importantly, because I still doubted him. "But stick with it, kid," he added. "We haven't given up on you yet." Atmananda failed to appreciate that my doubt-blocking efforts were largely successful, except for the time that I spent with him. It was then that I saw him not as a divine incarnation with a bright golden aura, but rather as an opportunistic Ph.D. with smooth social skills. It was then that knots of tension mounted in my stomach, pangs of guilt haunted my conscience, and only after several emotionally exhausting hours of telling myself no, this surfacing conflict appeared to short-circuit. It was then that my mind drew a blank. One evening, in a movie theater with Atmananda in the inner circle, the conflict had already run its course. I felt detached, numb, dumb. I gazed listlessly at the screen. Atmananda said something. Sal, Anne, Rachel, and Dana laughed. I looked straight ahead. I did not smile. They kept giving me popcorn and candy, but I had deeply withdrawn. I did not eat. I passed the items along. I wished it would stop. What happened next seemed to occur in slow motion. Sal held out a bucket of popcorn. Half-heartedly, I reached for it. I wanted to be left alone. I held the bucket loosely. It slipped from my hand. Popcorn covered the floor. I stood up. Popcorn fell from my lap. I sensed that my friends had been having fun and that I was ruining it for them. I would not meet their gazes. I stood there, bathed by the flickering lights of the film, frightened by the resurfacing conflict. Maybe it's been me all along, I thought. That's nonsense, I countered. It's Atmananda who is... No! I grimaced. I walked up the incline toward the exit. I left the theater in a stupor. I felt dizzy and disoriented. My mind again drew a blank. I crossed the street to UCSD. I walked to Revelle College, to the Humanities Library building, to HL 1402. I often reserved this room through the meditation club for Atmananda's public and private meetings. I sat down. I did not reflect on how his talks in this room had changed in the past 2 years, nor did I reflect on how he had changed, nor on how I had changed. I just sat there. After a few minutes, I stood up and left. I walked to John Muir College. I saw a picture of conservationist, writer, and mountaineer John Muir. I found myself thinking about the plumber, about Palomar Mountain, about the solitary hawk. "No," I said aloud and turned away. I walked down the hill to Central Library. I remembered walking here with 2 friends from high school who, months before, had unexpectedly appeared at the center door. I had not spoken with them in years. I told them I was no longer a disciple of an Indian guru. I also told them my new spiritual teacher was different than the others. "He's got a Ph.D., I explained. He's been on Phil Donahue. He's my friend. Despite my assertions that I was fine and that I could take care of myself, they still looked at me as if I were in some kind of cult. The past is dust, I now thought, recalling a saying that Atmananda had borrowed from Chinmoy. I walked to Third College. To Third College lecture hall, to TLH 104. I saw Atmananda's face on either side of the front wall. I had placed the two posters. Atmananda often claimed that his photograph was a doorway to his awareness field, and now I wondered if he was watching me through the posters on the wall. I felt uneasy and left. I walked to a nearby computer terminal. I logged on and played Star Trek. The E on the screen was the Enterprise. The R were the Romulans. The Ks were the Klingons. Klingons had stealth devices. I was E. R's and K's surrounded E. E got destroyed. Each time I played, E got destroyed. I logged off and walked away. I plodded over soft, squishy lawns. The sprinklers were on. I got wet. I felt like a zombie. I felt small. I crisscrossed campus several times more. I was tired. I thought about sleeping in the computer room. I was afraid to return to the center. I was afraid of facing Atmananda. I did not examine the fear. I walked home. I opened the door. It was late. Atmananda stood in the living room. I sensed he'd been waiting for me. "You may not realize it," he said right away, "but you are very sick. You are mentally ill. I am a professional, and you're going to have to trust me." Atmananda spoke authoritatively. He held something in his hand. He said he was going to help me. "Have you ever heard of stelazine?" he asked. "No." Stelazine is a drug that helps people who suffer from mental illness or depression. With the advent of drugs such as this, people who would otherwise be dysfunctional can lead happy and normal lives. I had a flash of fear. I glanced at the door. "Mental illness is nothing to be ashamed of," Atmananda said, holding out the pills. "You'd be surprised how many people experience some form of neurosis or psychosis. I have a cousin who took antipsychotic drugs for years. Now he flies F-14s for the military." The conflict sparked and it flickered and then disappeared. My mind became still. I reached for the pills. Western doctors don't really understand mental illness. It is a form of possession. Stelazine blocks out the lower occult worlds, which are inhabited by negative forces. I nodded. My doubts remained submerged. "We are not about to desert you, but you have to understand that you are mentally ill. All along you thought this is some kind of game. You did not take my warnings about the forces seriously. You opened up your consciousness to them, and now you're paying the price." I nodded again. "Of course, there's still a hope. But you've got to stop fighting me. You've got to act now." He instructed me to take the drug. I had no premonition as I swallowed the stelazine that Atmananda would later call me his chemical experiment. In the days that followed, Atmananda seemed to enjoy his assumed role as psychiatrist and nurse. He knocked on my door several times a day and in a cheery voice announced, "Hi, kid, reality check. How do you feel?" "Dizzy," I replied. I smiled. I was enjoying Atmananda's attention and kind treatment. "I feel pretty relaxed." "Good," he said. "Now, tell me about your thoughts." I did. He seemed pleased that I was finding it difficult to concentrate, that my thoughts had a fuzzy, dreamlike quality to them, and that my self-analyzing, authority-questioning nature had submerged beyond my control. "You should feel good about yourself," he said pleasantly. "You're making some definite progress."